The birthday cake sat in the center of the dining room table, 72 candles flickering like tiny beacons of mockery. I should have been grateful that my family had gathered to celebrate another year of my life. Instead, I felt like I was attending my own funeral. "Make a wish, Grandma Betty," my grandson Tommy called out, his 8-year-old face beaming with genuine excitement. He was the only one in the room who still looked at me with love instead of calculation. I closed my eyes and made my wish, though it wasn't what anyone would expect. Then I blew out the candles to scattered applause. "Speech. Speech," someone called out, though I couldn't tell if they were being sincere or sarcastic anymore. I stood up slowly, my arthritis making the simple movement more difficult than it used to be. "Thank you all for coming. It means more than you know to have family around on days like this." "Of course we're here, Mom," my daughter Sarah said, though she hadn't looked up from her phone once during dinner. "Where else would we be?" My daughter-in-law Jessica, my son Michael's wife of 5 years, raised her wine glass. "Actually, I think we should address something important while we're all here together." The room fell silent. Jessica had a way of commanding attention. She was beautiful, articulate, and absolutely ruthless when she wanted something. "Mom Betty," she began, her voice taking on a patronizing tone I'd grown to hate, "we're all concerned about you living alone in this big house." Here it comes, I thought. The intervention I'd been expecting for months. "We've noticed some changes," Jessica continued, glancing around the room for support. "Memory issues. Confusion. Yesterday you called Michael by his father's name 3 times. That was a lie. I'd called Michael by his father's name once, and it was because he was wearing the cologne George used to wear. But I'd learned not to defend myself anymore. It only made them more convinced of their narrative." "Jessica, maybe we should discuss this privately," Michael said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No, I think it's important we're all honest here." Jessica's smile was sharp as a blade. "Mom Betty, you have dementia. We all see it, and pretending otherwise isn't helping anyone." The words hit me like a slap. I looked around the table at my family, my children, their spouses, my grandchildren old enough to understand what was happening. Not one of them contradicted her. I don't have dementia," I said quietly. "See." Jessica gestured dramatically. "Denial is part of the condition. You forget conversations we've had, you repeat stories, you can't remember where you put things. Last week you couldn't find your car keys for 2 hours. Because you hid them in the freezer," I thought but didn't say. I'd seen her do it through the kitchen window, but who would believe me? "Grandma, it's okay," my daughter Sarah's eldest, 16-year-old Emma, said gently. "Lots of old people get confused." Old people. Confused. The labels stung worse than Jessica's accusation. "The important thing," Jessica continued, "is that we figure out next steps. This house is way too big for someone in your condition. The stairs alone are a safety hazard." Ah, there it was. The house. My beautiful 4-bedroom colonial that George and I had bought 4 to 5 years ago. The house where I'd raised my children, where I'd planned to live out my remaining years surrounded by memories of our life together. "I'm not confused about my house," I said firmly. "Mom," Michael spoke up for the first time, "Jessica and I have been looking at some really nice assisted living facilities. There's one about 20 minutes from our place that has an opening." "I'm not going to assisted living." "You can't keep living alone," Jessica insisted. "What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the stove? What if you have a medical emergency and can't remember how to call for help?" The family nodded in agreement, their faces a mixture of false concern and barely concealed greed. They'd been circling like vultures ever since George died 2 years ago, waiting for me to become weak enough for them to make their move. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully, "but I'm quite capable of taking care of myself." Jessica laughed, actually laughed. "Mom Betty, yesterday you asked me 3 times when Sarah was coming for dinner. Sarah who was standing right next to you." Another lie. I'd asked once because I couldn't hear her response over the television. But Jessica had twisted it, the way she twisted everything. "And last month," Sarah added, jumping on the bandwagon, "you forgot about our lunch date. I waited at the restaurant for an hour." That was because Jessica had called me that morning and told me Sarah was sick and had to cancel. But when I tried to explain, they just exchanged knowing looks. "It's just going to get worse," Jessica said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. The kind thing to do is to plan for the future now, while you can still be part of the decision-making process. I can make my own decisions. Can you, though? Jessica's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the cold calculation underneath. Because a person with dementia isn't legally competent to make major financial decisions. A person with dementia might need a family member to take over their affairs. For their own protection, of course. The threat was clear. They wanted me declared incompetent so they could control my assets, specifically, this house that was worth over $800,000 in today's market. What they didn't know was that I'd been expecting this for months. What they didn't know was that I'd been 3 steps ahead of them the entire time. I need to use the bathroom, I said, excusing myself from the table. Of course you do, Jessica said loudly enough for everyone to hear. That's another sign, you know. Frequent bathroom trips, confusion about bodily functions. I could hear her continuing her performance as I walked down the hallway. I hate to say it, but we might need to consider having her evaluated by a professional. For her own safety. In the bathroom, I locked the door and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Dr. Patricia Williams, my longtime physician and friend. Betty? Is everything all right? It's kind of late for a social call. Patricia, I need you to email me a copy of my cognitive assessment from last month. The one where you said my mental faculties are completely normal for someone my age. Of course, but may I ask why? My family seems to think I have dementia. I'd like to have documentation proving otherwise. There was a pause. Betty, are you safe? Do you need me to call someone? I'm fine. Just send the assessment, please. And Patricia? If anyone calls claiming to be my family and asking about my mental health, please refer them to me directly. Absolutely. Doctor-patient confidentiality is sacred. I'll send that assessment right now. Next, I called my attorney, David Chen, who I'd known for over 20 years. David, it's Betty Morrison. I need you to prepare transfer documents for the house. I want to donate it to the Children's Hospital Foundation, effective immediately. Betty, that's a very generous donation, but are you sure? That's a substantial asset. I'm completely sure. My family seems to think I'm too mentally incompetent to make decisions about my own property. I'd like to prove them wrong. I can have the paperwork ready first thing in the morning. Do you want the transfer to be immediate? Yes. And David? I want them to be notified by official letter. I want there to be no ambiguity about my mental state when I made this decision. When I returned to the dining room, Jessica was holding court, explaining to everyone how they'd need to gently transition me out of the house. We're thinking we could list it next month, she was saying. The market's really good right now. We could probably get close to asking price. I asked quietly. Jessica didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. Well, obviously Michael and I would handle the sale. You wouldn't want to deal with all that stress and paperwork. How thoughtful of you. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of condescending comments and thinly veiled threats. Jessica made sure to point out every time I paused to think, every time I needed to ask someone to repeat themselves over the noise, every normal behavior of a 72-year-old woman that she could twist into evidence of cognitive decline. By the time everyone left, I was exhausted, not from confusion or dementia, but from the emotional abuse I'd endured at my own birthday party. I slept surprisingly well that night. Maybe it was the relief of finally taking action, or maybe it was the anticipation of what the morning would bring. At 9 a.m. sharp, my phone started ringing. Mom, what the hell did you do? Michael's voice was panicked. Good morning to you too, dear. Don't play dumb. We just got a letter from some attorney saying you donated the house to charity. Tell me this is some kind of mistake. No mistake. I donated my house to the Children's Hospital Foundation. It seemed like the right thing to do. I could hear Jessica screaming in the background. Let me talk to her. Mom, Michael's voice was strained. You can't just give away an $800,000 house. You're not thinking clearly. Actually, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. I decided I'd rather my house help sick children than be sold by people who think I'm mentally incompetent. Jessica grabbed the phone. You can't do this. You have dementia. This donation isn't legal. Actually, it is legal. I had a cognitive assessment done last month that shows I'm mentally competent. My attorney required it before processing the donation, just to be safe. The silence on the other end was deafening. You had an assessment. Jessica's voice had lost all its confidence. Dr. Patricia Williams can provide you with the results if you'd like. Perfect cognitive function for a woman my age. No signs of dementia, confusion, or mental decline whatsoever. But you forget things. You repeat stories. You can't find your keys. I forget things occasionally because I'm 72, not because I have dementia. I repeat stories because I enjoy sharing memories with my family. And I couldn't find my keys because someone hid them in my freezer while I was in the bathroom. Another long silence. We can contest this, Jessica said finally, her voice shaking with rage. We can prove you're not competent. Good luck with that. You'll need medical evidence, and all the medical evidence shows I'm perfectly fine. You'll also need to explain to a judge why you diagnosed me with dementia without any medical training. I hung up and made myself a cup of tea, feeling lighter than I had in years. Over the next few days, the calls continued. First angry, then pleading, then threatening. Jessica hired a lawyer who quickly told her she had no case. The donation was legal, I was mentally competent, and there was no evidence of coercion or fraud. Sarah stopped by later that week, tears in her eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you. I knew Jessica was being cruel, but I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. Why didn't you defend me? Sarah looked ashamed. Because she convinced us you were getting confused. And honestly, we were scared. Scared of losing you to dementia, scared of having to make hard decisions about your care. It was easier to believe her version than to face the truth. What truth? That you're fine. That we were being greedy and selfish. That we treated you horribly because we wanted your house. I hugged my daughter, feeling some of the hurt begin to heal. Not all of you. Tommy still loves me just as I am. He's 8. He sees clearly. Maybe we could all learn from him. 6 months later, I moved into a beautiful one-bedroom condo near the hospital. I volunteer there twice a week, reading to children in the cancer ward. The house I donated became a temporary residence for families of patients, a place where people can stay close to their loved ones during the hardest times of their lives. Michael and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. He divorced Jessica after discovering she'd been stealing from her previous employer. Apparently, diagnosing fake dementia wasn't her only skill. As for Jessica herself? Last I heard, she was working at a call center and living with her mother. Turns out, when you burn all your bridges, you don't have many places left to go. My mind remains sharp, my memory intact, and my sense of self-worth fully restored. The best part? I wake up every morning knowing that my house is providing comfort to families facing real crises, not manufactured ones designed to steal an inheritance. Sometimes the best revenge is proving exactly how competent you really are.